Welcome to Chinwag Tuesdays, your passport to a world of language and culture.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Chinwag Tuesdays. I'm Amanda and today's special guest is Charlene, an immigration lawyer in Melbourne. So thanks for coming on today and being my special guest, Charlene.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm really just thrilled to be here.
Thank you so much. Maybe to get started, tell us a bit about your background and what led you to become an immigration lawyer in Melbourne.
Okay, so here's the story. I actually got my permanent resident visa when I think about it now, when I was about 36. I'm 47 now. And then at that time, so the visa was sponsored by Western Australia. So we moved there.
Mhm.
That's also where my parents are based. Moved there, lived there 2 years. At that time, I was still a technology marketing person. And in my mind, I had
Okay.
thought I'll go there and continue to do that. But my parents run a Australian migration business in Perth, and trying to get marketing jobs in Perth is really difficult. Was really difficult. And so mom said to me, hey, why don't
Mhm.
you get qualified and then we will and then try it out and then we can go from there. And so that's what I did.
Yeah.
Ended up joining the family business, and here I
Yeah.
am. So
Wow.
yeah, and then that was in Perth. My partner got a
Yep.
job offer in Melbourne, and that's how we ended up in Melbourne.
Wow, amazing. So where's your home country?
So home country is Singapore. So I
Wow.
spent
Okay. So not too far away.
not too far away, spent, almost all my life there that I knew anyway at that time, and only moved when I was 37. Yeah. So it was quite a
Wow.
change. It was really quite a change, quite a big adventure. Never
Mhm.
really planned to do it, didn't really expect to do it at that
Yeah.
time, but you go where I go where
Yeah.
life
Life
opens
happens.
doors. Mhm.
Yeah. So your parents have the migration business in Perth. Is that what they did in Singapore as well? Or was this a completely new
No.
venture for everyone?
Completely new for everyone. And I
Wow.
feel like that's part of the migrant life, right? When we move,
Yeah.
we don't always get to do what we were familiar with previously, and then you figure out what to do.
Yeah.
Which is why sometimes
Yeah.
when I introduce myself, I think I always say if I'm not an accountant, I'm doing this.
Yes. Yeah. Wow. I
Yeah.
totally agree, though. That's part of the migrant life. So
Yeah.
I actually live in India and I've been here for 5 years and I didn't teach English. This started after I moved here. So I had been here for about 2 years, 3 years, then I
Yeah.
started the teaching journey. But
Yeah.
my background was in hospitality management. So I worked in
Yeah.
hotels for like 7 or 8 years. Then I
Oh,
moved into
wow.
call centers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the job I had before I moved here was with workers' compensation. I was a claims assessor for an insurance company.
Oh, wow. See? Yes.
Yeah. So the thing is that I didn't study at a university in Australia. I went to TAFE. So I never got a bachelor's degree.
Yes.
Here in India, a bachelor's degree is, it puts you above everyone else because there's such a high population, right? So it was a little bit difficult for me to try and find a job in what I had in Australia because even though I had experience, let's say in hospitality management, I
Yep.
didn't have a degree.
Yes.
So yeah, I just decided to do English as a bit of a hobby to begin with. And now I've created this whole business.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So I often initially when I first came to Australia, there's this change that sometimes I think we don't expect, at least for me, right? So I ended up
Yeah.
moved to Australia, thought I'll do this, ended up doing something else.
Yeah.
And so oftentimes in this journey that in my Australian journey, whenever I'm feeling defeated or I'm feeling nervous or anxious about something, I often remind myself to be like the
Mhm.
clients that I have, in that we're extremely
Yeah.
brave.
Wow.
They are extremely, a lot of them come here and just start from scratch,
Yeah.
right? And so that's
Yes.
what I remind
True.
myself. Every
Yeah.
time I feel anxious, I'm like, be like your clients, right? And do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So true. I feel like when you've gone through a similar process to the people you're servicing or helping, it makes you more empathetic to their situation. I'm living in a foreign country. I'm also trying to learn Hindi. So I feel like that makes me a better teacher and listener
Yes.
for when I have students wanting to learn English because
Yes.
they're either in Australia or moving to Australia, because I am living that as well. So yeah, I'm sure it's
Yeah.
probably the same for you, helping clients with their immigration, reasons or visas or whatever, because you went through that yourself.
Correct. You're absolutely right about that.
Wow. All right. So what are the key steps, if any, in the Australian immigration process that applicants should be aware of?
Okay, so I think anyone, and I'll think about the questions that I generally get from my clients, right? One of the things that I always
Mhm.
want to bring up front to all my clients is this. There are some common ways in terms of how you can obtain Australian visas when you come to Australia, and that's one based on your skill, right?
Mhm.
So based on your qualifications as well as your employment history. And in that sense, that can go two ways. That can go by getting sponsored by an employer or
Mhm.
getting your skills assessed and so that you'll be able to apply for the points tested general skilled migration. So I think a lot of people talk about the 189s and the 190s and the 491s. So those are the general skilled points tested visas. And then the other way is
Sure.
with your family, and by that I refer mostly to parents as well as partner visas.
Yes.
Okay, so those
Okay.
are the three main ways. The thing that I would generally highlight to people is this. The Australian visa requirements, they are scenario based, right? And that's where the complexity lies, right? You might know someone
Yeah.
from somewhere in a similar job as you who has gotten their permanent resident visa through, let's say,
Yeah.
the points tested way, and it seems very straightforward for them. And it may very well be
Yeah.
that may be because they hold a certain passport from a certain country that doesn't require
True.
skills assessment, for example. And so
Yeah.
therefore the steps that they have to take a little bit more straightforward. But for instance,
Yeah.
if you have, let's say if you hold a passport from India, for instance, and you do hold qualifications in information technology, but you ended up doing something else completely, that the general skill migration pathway will then be more difficult because all you have are qualifications, but you don't have the employment evidence for that. So that's what I would actually highlight to people when they're starting to do the initial research. But I guess, sorry, I digressed a little bit from your question. Right?
That's okay. That's fine. It's very interesting. It's interesting to hear.
Yeah. So I guess some of the things that for someone thinking about obtaining permanent residency, I would start off by, my advice would be start off by looking at the skilled occupation list. If they go online and they Google Australia skilled occupation list, they will be able to come to this long list on the Department of Home Affairs website. Start from there. So start from your own qualifications and what you've been doing, and then see if there's a relevant occupation on that list that aligns to what they've been doing.
Okay, great tips. Yes, that website has helped me a few times. I get people asking me questions about this kind of stuff just because I'm Australian and they assume I know everything about Australia.
Yes.
And I'm like, look at this skilled occupations list. It's a good starting point. It's there, it's the government.
Yes.
All right. So what are common mistakes that you see applicants make during their application process?
Okay. So if there are people who want to do the 189, 190, 491 skilled migration pathway, so that's the points tester one. That's the one where they have to have at least 65 points. They need to have at least competent English. They need to have positive skills assessments in place before they will be eligible for the visa. So they can put in an expression of interest. So for those, there are a couple of things to take note, right? Is that all of this must be in place, right? So your English results, your skills assessment, so on and so forth, they must be valid at the time that you receive an invitation. Okay. So I have had cases where the process is such that, so with the general skilled migration process, you put in an expression of interest, right? And then you get an invitation, and then you apply for the visa So what
Okay.
some people tend to do, which is why when I work with my clients, I make sure that they give me all the documents first, right? So you have all the documents, you have your English in place, you have your skills assessment, you have all of your employment evidence in place before we put in the expression of interest. Because then then we all know that you have everything required to support your points claim, so that when you get an invitation from the government or from the state to apply for your visa, not only do you have all of those documents in hand to just proceed, right? It also means that you know you are eligible at the time of invitation. Because
Yeah.
I've had clients coming to me, or coming in for a consultation to say, okay, I have all this in place. I got my invitation, but my English has expired, or my skills assessment has expired.
Okay.
What
Yeah.
should I do? So those tend to be one of the mistakes that people make. They claim too much
Okay.
points, and that could be because they didn't realize that they couldn't claim, an unrelated employment, or they may also have clicked
Oh,
something wrong, right?
okay. Yeah. Human
Or
error.
correct, or something has expired. So
Okay.
that's something with general skills assessment. I will always say be very careful when you're filling out
Yeah.
that expression, your claims to points, and always make sure you have all those documents in place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Great advice. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sure that probably happens more often than not, I would
It
say.
happens a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's probably one of those things where maybe they don't even realize that the English, certificate expires or
Yes.
that sort of stuff.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And it actually happened a lot when we moved from lockdown.
Oh, true. Of course.
So
Yeah.
what a lot of people did was they put in all the expressions of interest, didn't hear back from a really long time, so kind of gave up on that while they pursued, other employer-sponsored visas, so on and so forth. And then all of a sudden they got the invitation. And then I got a couple of consult meetings going, Charlene, is there anything I can do? And I don't know whether generally people know this. I think it was about a year back. I'm going to try and summarize this. There is case law that allowed someone they received an invitation, their skills assessment had already expired, so therefore the visa was refused, right? But what happened was that person got an invitation, right? They were already in the process of getting a new skills assessment. So by the time of invitation, skills assessment had already expired, but by the time they responded to the invitation, they had a valid skills assessment already. So
okay.
So the applicant brought it to tribunal, so on and so forth. It got approved, right? And so
Great. So now the precedent has been set.
Correct. So there's precedent that it is possible. However, even after that precedent was set, what happened was the Department of Home Affairs, they did send out a communication to say, yes, they're aware of this particular case, but no, they will not be accepting expired results, or they will not be accepting this moving forward, which is why when clients ask me what do I think they should do in these instances, I say I'm a cautious person in general, which makes me a cautious advisor as a result. So I will always say, if you don't have the valid results at the time of invitation, I would say forego it. But if you're prepared to follow it all the way through, you're prepared, one, to get a refusal, because there's always a chance, right? We can always build the submissions to say and refer to the precedent. I have seen successful cases, but I've also seen cases where the department has just told the line and said that no, we'll refuse it. So I'll say if you're prepared to get a refusal and follow this all the way to tribunal and back again, then do it, right?
How long does that tribunal process normally take, like to go from review and then tribunal?
Long.
Yeah, it would be.
So typically, in general, the wait time at tribunal is 3 years. The cost to put in an application at tribunal is about $3,000. So yeah. So, and that's what I mean. So ultimately it would, I almost feel like there's no benefit of it. Or it depends. It really depends on the situation that the person is in. If you're happy to stay in Australia, right? And if you were coming off a substantive visa, and you're in a good position to stay in Australia, you have a bridging visa A, you can still travel in and out as a result, sure,
True.
do it, right? But otherwise,
Mm.
yeah, I would generally say if you have the time to put in a new one, you're on a good visa at the moment, then do that, because then at least you
Yeah.
know it's going to be smooth. But yeah.
Yeah, true. And is there two visa fees in that situation, or do you pay the fee once it's like, when do you pay the fee in this case? The
So if it
application
gets
fee?
refused and then you go to tribunal, you mean?
No, the first way. So when you say that, maybe they had an expired skills assessment, but then they
Mhm.
get and then they get the refusal or whatever, have they already
Yes.
paid at this stage?
Yes.
So they've paid and then they'd have to do a new application and pay again.
No. So the process would
Okay.
be, if you get a refusal, you just pay the fees to go to tribunal. If you're successful,
Right.
the tribunal will send it back to the Department of Home Affairs, and then the Department of Home Affairs will
Okay.
continue to process it. No additional fees, no additional
Okay.
application fees, but you might have to do things like
Sure.
send new police check, go for another
Sure.
medical test, so on and so forth. But the
Mhm.
application fees, there shouldn't be any additional ones.
Okay.
Mm.
All right. So when you were saying that sometimes you give the advice to forego and then apply again,
Yes.
in that case, is there two fees?
Yes. In that case, there is two fees.
Okay.
But
Yeah, right. So it's
if
either,
you get an invitation,
sorry,
but if you get an invitation, depending on the state that you've made the application for, there may
Yeah.
have been a nomination fee. Some states don't
Right.
do it at
Okay.
all, but so that
Yeah.
would have been the sunk cost for that. But it's
Yeah.
thankfully
Yeah.
never as much as the visa application fee itself.
Oh, good. Okay. I
Yes.
was going to say it's either you pay two fees or you go to tribunal and pay that $3,000. Either way,
Yes.
you're out of pocket. How horrible. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. All right. The visa application process is a very expensive one. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So I get it. I get why applicants pay so much attention to it as well. It is expensive.
Yeah. Yeah. True. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So, what challenges do applicants frequently face when applying for visas, and how can they overcome them? This probably ties in a bit with the previous question, actually. But what are some other challenges that you see?
I find that most of the challenges will have to do with, like, for instance, providing all the evidence that is required that supports your employment duration. So whether it's the points tested visa or employer sponsored visas, right? A lot of people will reach that point where they will see that they will have to show that they have been working all that 2 or 3 years previously, right? And so typically, I will always ask my clients for all of the ideal information, which is first and last payslip, signed employment contracts, detailed reference letters, tax records. A lot of the time, not everyone will have all of it. And sometimes people have been paid in cash and then you don't have payslip. So things like that. So what I'll say is, if anyone has just this possible feeling that they're going to be applying for any visa to Australia, I'll say keep good records of actually everything, especially where employment is concerned. Because once you leave, sometimes employers, the business changes, the business, sunsets, and, it just closes, and then you can't get what you need. That sucks.
Yeah, right. Great advice. Yes. So always just have your documents in order regardless, really.
Correct. And if you don't, I always say speak to, a migration professional so that they can tell you, so that they'll be able to see what you have and then advise you on alternative documents.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Oh, so important. Definitely. So, what would you say are some tips for making a strong and successful visa application, besides what you have just recommended about keeping everything in order?
I would always say front load everything. So a lot of the times I'll get clients who say, oh, is this a time of application or is it a time of decision requirement? Because I'm really cautious and I really try to front load everything. I always tell my clients that if you can, just give all of the time of decision and all of the time of application requirements up front. That means, completing your medicals as soon as possible as well, so that by the
Right.
time
Yeah.
the case officer gets to your application, everything's there. They don't need to ask you for anything else. They can just say, check, check, check.
Mm.
Okay, all done, go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So those documents generally refer to things like police checks, right? Health
Hmm.
insurance. I get that for some countries, getting their police checks can be a very long process. So heads up, first advice that I will have to anyone is, again, if you have in your future some idea that you want to apply for an Australian visa and you know that police checks in your country or any country that you've spent more than 12 months in after you turn 16 years of age, if you know that the
Hmm.
process is long, start that process first. Go do that so that at least you have that.
Yeah.
Sometimes my clients will ask me, how about if I provide, proof that I've applied for the police check? And I always say, yes, you can do that, but all it will do is it will let the case officer know that you've applied for it. They'll have to wait until they see the outcome before they make a decision
True.
anyway. So if you want something to
Mm.
be processed quickly, do what you can to get those documents prepared in advance.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, great tips. Yes. I didn't even think of that, like how long a police check could take in some countries. It would be a very long process.
Yes, some amazingly long.
Yeah. And I didn't realize that if you've spent more than 12 months in one country after you turn 16. So if you're someone that travels around a lot for work, you have to go to every
Yes,
single country you've spent time in. My goodness.
correct. So sometimes when
Yeah.
when we work with clients who travel a lot for work, oh, yeah, the travel history,
Tough.
a bit painful.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
All right. So when should someone consider consulting with an immigration lawyer during their visa process?
I would say as soon as they have an idea that's something that they want to do, I would say consult with a migration professional for that, because then at least
Yeah,
you know what to expect. I mean,
sure.
the wonderful thing about the internet is that there's a lot of information online that you can find yourself, which is great. The flip side of that is that there's also a lot of misinformation, and I think we talk about this all the time. And with Australian migration, as with any other profession, because there's so much information and there's so much uncertainty, my advice is always, when you are serious about understanding your options, understanding your visa options, speak to someone about it. And I would advise anyone to pay for that advice. So do a paid consultation would be my advice, because then what you're getting is bespoke, individualized advice. If you don't, what you'll be getting is very broad advice. It's very general, because
Yeah.
because that person won't set aside time to look at your specific, say, resume, or look at your specific history to advise you on your specific options. But yeah, so once someone's serious about it, reach out and then speak to someone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, so true. Because what you said about there being a lot of information, which is great. On the flip side, there's a lot of information which leads to misinformation, and people can
Correct.
get overwhelmed, and then they start looking for other people who have been in the same situation, and then they come to you and say, I know this person from that state that did this.
Yes.
Are approved, and they start comparing. I have noticed that, and I don't know if this has always been the case or if it's just since the start of like social media and Instagram and things like that. A lot of people nowadays expect things for free or really cheap.
Yes.
And I know that not everyone wants to spend money, especially in this financial climate.
Yeah.
But what you said, I think, just nails it, in that if you look for a free consultation, it's going to be very broad. It's not specific. They're not going to put time aside to personalize and tailor the advice and information they're giving you. And I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
If you're paying for the personalization of the advice.
Yeah, that's my key takeaway for that, because often I'll get the question of, or I'll see people say things like, oh, I did this application on my own, or I figured this out on my own. I
Mm.
got my visa. And I say this to people, it's entirely possible to do this on your own, right?
Yeah.
And it's based on several things, right? One, the person that you are, right? If you are a very detailed person and you have been very good at record keeping, absolutely you can do it on your own.
Mhm.
But if you're not that detailed, and if you're not that detailed a person, when you fill up a form, you gloss over things, I'll say get someone to do it for you, right? Because it's not just about
Yeah.
the filling. It's, as I said earlier, it's scenario based, right? A
Yeah.
lot of people, another thing that I realize that people miss out on is this. There's the skills assessment requirement, and then there's the visa requirement.
Yeah.
A lot of people think that that if you meet the visa requirement, you will meet the skills assessment requirement,
Okay.
which
Got
is
it.
correct, which is not correct, right?
Yeah.
You can meet the visa requirement, but skills assessment requirement is higher. So like for instance, teachers, skills assessment, to get a positive skills assessment for teachers, first of all, you'll need to sit for a different English test, and the scores for certain components are different, it's higher. Things like that. And then sometimes people get caught out. So they'll go like, wait, I don't understand why I don't have my positive skills assessment. And then when you look into it and you
Mhm.
point it out to them, they're like, oh, okay, I get it now. But yeah, so that's where someone would have wasted some time and some money going the first round on their own, when
Yeah.
you could, for instance, pay for consultation and get that clarity. You can still walk away from the consultation and do it on your own, but then you have that clarity.
Yes.
Yeah.
True. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I love that. So, first kind of initial consultation would be, it's kind of a clarity call in a way, isn't it? You're
Correct.
getting that clarity, and then you can then make that decision whether you want to continue with a paid service, or do you have enough to be able to do that on your own?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
have
Great.
had,
Great advice.
and that's what I do tell my clients when they're not sure about the consults. And I do share with them, I have like a handful of clients who after the consult, they feel confident enough to continue on their own, and they do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Great.
Yeah.
All right. So, got a couple of questions from Instagram here because we're on the
Yes.
topic of teaching. Let's just jump
Yes.
to the teaching question. Someone
Yes.
has asked, is being a secondary teacher a good pathway for PR in Australia, even if the teaching field is something like drama or languages?
Yes. So the short answer to that is yes, totally. I actually have one client who went the secondary school teacher route, and she was a music teacher,
Wow.
previously.
Cool.
So yes, definitely you can do that. Off the top of my head, actually, if you're a drama teacher, I would also ask that person to consider employer sponsored as well.
Okay. Great
Yeah.
advice. Yeah, cool.
I think in general,
right.
one of the things that I do want to tell people is this: the employer-sponsored subclass 42, so that's a TSS visa, those are being processed really quickly in comparison to
Great
almost
tip.
all the other visas. So I would actually,
Okay.
and it's reflective of the market. I'm happy to see that the government is supporting employer in that way. I'm actually seeing, so I would say to anyone thinking about covering their ground, consider the employer-sponsored 482 visa, because
Mhm.
I've had applications get submitted and granted within 2 weeks. And so
Wow.
the range is, so yes, it's quick. It can be within 2 weeks. Generally, they're about 3 or 4 months, but yeah,
Sure.
it's quick.
Oh gosh. All
Yeah.
right. Wonderful. I'm sure this person will be happy to hear that.
Great. Yeah, do it. And also from November of this year, the government has also reduced the work requirement for the TSS visa. It used to be 2 years. You need to have 2 years
Okay.
of work requirement. From November onwards, it'll be just 1 year.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Great. All right. Next question is about the TOEIC test. So this person has asked, is a TOEIC test from Brazil valid for the English score requirement in the immigration process? I'm just going to go ahead and assume that maybe this could be valid for all countries, but yeah.
So for English, and see how I'm just turning away right now, right? So for the English test, no, it's not. So the English test in general that are accepted are your IELTS, your PT, TOEFL, OET,
Mm-hmm.
and the Cambridge
Mm-hmm.
Advanced. In general, though, I think most people do IELTS and
Yeah.
PTE. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
even
They're the two most common ones I see too.
yeah, those are the more common ones. And even with the OET ones, I think that, let me see. Oh, it's
Is
back
that the
on.
medical one?
Yes, that's a medical one. Yeah. Yes. So
Mm-hmm.
not
Okay.
for the other one. Stick to the standards.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Good. Next question. Are there any universities in Australia that accept pharmacists without needing equivalency exams or only a Master of Pharmacy degree?
I actually don't know that one in detail, in exact detail, but I would say
It's a very specific question.
yeah, it's a very specific question. I do work with a lot of pharmacists. A lot of them already come with with either a master's or a bachelor. Chances are, I would say probably not.
Okay.
Probably not.
All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Better to have those equivalencies or the masters.
Correct. In place. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Last question. Another quite specific one, but what are the chances of an undergraduate BBA LLB? I had to Google this, Bachelor of Business Administration and Bachelor of Legislative Law student from India getting a visa for a Masters of Law program in Australia?
Oh, the student visa applications these days have been so problematic, right? There's been a lot of scrutiny there's been scrutiny with regard to student visas in general, but it's
Yeah.
gotten even more intense in the past 6 months. So
Yes.
what I'll say, my advice to that person is you can try. The best way to pull together a strong student visa application at this point is to ensure that you have your enrollment in place, right? That would
Mhm.
mean that you would have to engage with the school. Get enrolled, if you can get enrolled into a strong established institution, that would be the first advice that I would ask that
Mhm.
person. Try and get enrolled in an established institution, and then show that if you can also show that your history then falls in line with what you're going to study, that will probably be the best way. That will probably be
Okay.
if that makes sense at all. So
Yeah.
if you've just graduated, I think there's a good chance. However, if you've just graduated and then, I don't know, you've gone to work in something completely unrelated, that's probably not going to be great. But give it a go. And the first goal would definitely be pick a good institution, an established one.
Yeah, because that's something the immigration thing cracking down on, isn't it? I read an article about this. Is those, are they called ghost schools or something? Ghost colleges?
Yeah.
Or the shell colleges. I can't remember the exact name, but it's yes, yeah. So basically it's on the outside, it looks like a college, on the inside it's not. And it's basically just where people can apply to satisfy
Correct.
the needs of a study visa.
Correct.
Yeah.
So there's
Yeah.
that, and then
Okay. So important.
they're looking so hard into student visa applications that even the onshore students, where they have to apply for a student visa extension for the related course, it's also those kind of visa applications are also getting refused. Not on the grounds of the case officer feeling that that person is not a genuine student. So
Yeah.
even when it's that aligned, even when that lines up,
Yeah.
so I would say definitely prepare for the possibility of putting in the visa a couple of times. It happens. It's
Yeah.
just how it is.
Yeah.
Or just waiting it out.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Kind of off topic, but related, when you said applying a couple of times for the visa if it gets refused.
Yes.
I don't know if this is a myth or not, but does immigration kind of look down on you if you keep applying after refusals? Does it put like a red flag on your name, or is that situational? It depends.
I don't think that's the case. I sometimes feel like it really depends on the reasons for refusal. So every time the department refuses an application, a decision record must be provided where they should detail the reasons for refusal. Some case officers do it better than others, and in saying that, I'm just referring to the case officers who really detail their reasons for refusal, right? If their reasons for refusal are things like they cite it and they end up saying something like they're not satisfied that this person is a genuine visitor or a genuine student. If you apply again and you address those reasons, I don't see that giving you a black mark.
Okay, yeah.
However, the refusal is because you've provided like a fraudulent document, or you didn't declare something that you should have, that was based
Yeah.
on another application that you did previously, and they have a record of
Okay.
that. Then yes, that's gonna
Mm.
work against you. But otherwise, if it's for reasonable reasons, go ahead and do it. I personally
Yeah.
feel that it goes to show that you are genuine.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. All right, Charlene, we'll start finishing up. But before we do, if people want to contact you, how can they? I'll put your details in the description of the episode.
Yeah, you can email me. That's always the best way to go, because then we can have an initial conversation. And I'll definitely say, if you have any questions, be prepared to send your resume, because then at least I'll have an initial view of your qualifications.
Okay, perfect. Wonderful. All right. Well, wow, lots of great information and tips today. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.